Let me start with you, Danielle, and share with us what are some of the ways when it comes to dealing with the top concerns of the African American agenda. What are some of the things that your party, that the Republican Party, has identified as top of the list? What are they doing to really speak to Black voters about them?
Well, I do want to take this opportunity and just kind of carve out this space when it comes to us as Black Republicans, and what drives us to being a part of the Republican Party is one, that we have, that we disconnect from this idea that Black excellence is predicated on the white conscience. It's this idea that we have in our own community the ability through having our own businesses, through higher education, through vocational training, as well as rebuilding our family structure. We have the ability within ourselves, Black people as families and communities, we are a working system. We have the ability within ourselves, and not to try to say that all of the answers are within ourselves, because myself as a Christian, I look to God, who gives me the best reflection of myself as intended. But when you look at us as a system, we function, we work, we have to switch towards those things that are important to our community, which as well are the basis for the Republican Party. Capitalism, owning our own businesses, us being a community of faith, us being sort of like, how should I say it? The idea of the family, protecting life, all of these things that if we grab hold of and take responsibility back in our communities, we would get rid of some of those gaps that you see.
Glenn, I hear some key words in there: responsibility, self-assuredness, doing the work. Glenn, when you hear the explanation that Daniel offered, what are you hearing in that, and is it much different than what the Democratic Party might be offering?
I don't think anyone would deny the importance of individual responsibility as well as collective responsibility. But getting back to the two parties, in reality, what happens to Black Americans or Americans in general, that's decided much more at a local level, frankly, than it is at a national level. We will hear promises from the left, we'll hear promises from the right, but federal dollars get funneled down. They get funneled down to the state, and then they get funneled down to local governments. And those governments, state governments and local governments, have a lot more to say about issues of equity and upward mobility than the federal government does. I think if we're looking at what the federal government or the parties can do for Black Americans, I would suggest starting with putting teeth back in the Voting Rights Act. I would suggest putting the Justice Department putting teeth back into its enforcement actions when it comes to police misconduct. Those are the types of things that the federal government can do. But in reality, whether we're talking about unemployment, whether we're talking about economic mobility, jobs, those things are created locally.
And that's so key to understand, especially as we're heading toward Election Day, that certainly people are voting for their choice candidate for president, but there are a lot of key local races as well, and those local decisions are making the impact. Erica, can you share what maybe some of the blind spots are on the part of the Democratic appeal to African American voters? You know, I'm taking a look at Joe Biden's campaign page and certainly Donald Trump's campaign page, and some of the appeal does seem to go toward social justice and emotion. But can you kind of speak to that about where they're hitting it and where perhaps they might be missing the mark still?
Thank you, and for that question, because it helps me merge the previous question and understanding the economic impact of the decisions that we make. For most Black Americans, whether we're looking nationwide or looking locally and looking in North Carolina, at the end of the day, it's about what policies are affecting our pocketbook. When we look at the tremendous wealth inequality between Black and white, this is a result of systemic discrimination and racism that can only be responded to by making sure that we have equal pay for equal work. As a former engineer in corporate America, I had as much production, was doing stellar work, but I still did not earn on the dollar what my white male counterpart earned on the dollar. I think both parties need to do more to address the statistics that show that Asian women earn 81 cents on the dollar of a white male. White women earn about 80 cents, but for Black and Latino women, that resorts to 63 cents and 57 cents on the dollar, which is atrocious. When you are looking at equal pay for equal work and embracing those issues and those matters that are important to North Carolinians and to Black America, you cannot ice over, you cannot skip. You must have a tangible plan for creating economic growth opportunities for workers. And that starts with looking at our pay band and our pay disparity, not only between demographics, but also between genders. And so Black men don't earn on the dollar what white men earn. And I am proud to say that I worked with Democrats for years to pass a livable wage increase for state employees, where all state employees, regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of your zip code, whether you live in the rural parts of North Carolina or the urban centers, you earn at minimum $15 an hour, which is extremely important, a part of this discussion. We also need to look at what we're doing to promote economic opportunities for small businesses.